They might talk about humour, music, film, books, football and box sets, exercise and maybe even food, trivia and sport, politics and health, sometimes well-being too. On the Life with Brian. On the Life with Brian.
Hello there, how's it going? Nice to have you with us for this episode of Life with Brian, with your three co-hosts who have between us a combined total of 4 Premier Leagues, 2 FA Cups, a League Cup, a European Cup Winners' Cup, Scottish Cup, Scottish League Cup, and not forgetting 5 Charity Shields. It's Mark and Matthew, who, let's be honest, we don't have any of those medals. But more notably, we have former Manchester United and Celtic schemer Brian McClare. How are you both?
Good. Very, very good. Thank you, sir.
Good. And as usual, we are joined by a special guest. And with us this time is a Scottish actor, best known for his roles in sketch shows such as Naked Video, City Lights, Only an Excuse, and is currently starring in the brilliant hit BBC sitcom Two Doors Down. It's a big welcome to Jonathan Watson. How are you doing, Jonathan?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks very much for having me on.
It's a pleasure, sir. I suppose the thing, because it's very, very recent, what your view on the decision to remove Michael Beale as the manager of Glasgow Rangers?
Yeah, well, I think it was inevitable, really. To be honest, I'm a Rangers fan, and I didn't want him as manager in the first place. I didn't think he had the necessary experience to take on a club that size, and so it comes as no surprise. And when they played one of your former clubs a week or so ago, I mean, they scraped a win, and the fans were still booing. So I think the writing was on the wall. He was a dead man walking. So it'll be interesting to see who they go for now. I was reading this morning some of the gossip, and I think this is a really important call. They'll need to get this one right, because they faltered recently. So
who did you fancy before Michael was appointed?
Well, the thing is, Brian,
was there a candidate then that you would have chosen?
I'm one of the few Rangers fans. I like Van Bronckhorst, and I wanted Van Bronckhorst in place before Gerrard came, because of his work at Feyenoord, and I just thought he was a good appointment, and I think, you look. I know the results didn't go well for him before he lost the job, but if you consider that he took over Rangers from Gerrard when Rangers weren't playing well. I mean, I know they were ahead in the league, but that was because there was a kind of iffy start from Ange Postecoglou before he went into the fantastic run. But Rangers weren't in a good place, and Van Bronckhorst managed to sort of settle the ship, calm everything down, and take us in this fantastic European run and get us to a European final, one kick away from winning a fantastic trophy.
Yeah.
And I'm just a fan. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes, whether he was, if Van Bronckhorst was given the freedom to sign who he wanted to sign, if he was given any indication what budget he had to work with, all these things we don't know. But I would have stuck with Van Bronckhorst. But there you go.
So you'd have him back then?
I don't know. I don't think it would work coming back. It very seldom does, and I think to be fair, to be honest, the majority of the Rangers fans wouldn't want him back.
Looking on the bright side, Scotland aren't doing too badly at the minute either, I suppose.
Scotland are doing great, yeah, but Stevie Clarke has done a fantastic job, and also he's got a great pool of players to choose from. They're all playing at a really good level. I was watching a game at the weekend, Aston Villa against Brighton, and I know Brighton got hoovered, but Billy Gilmour was great. Played really, really well. Players like that to choose from. You get Tierney in Spain now, and Andy Robertson at Liverpool. He's got a good bunch of players to choose from. Yeah.
We always embarrass our guests by asking them who their footballing heroes were growing up. I mean, some are old enough to, not say Brian McClare. I dare say you won't say Brian McClare, but who were your boyhood heroes as a Rangers fan in your youth?
Well, starting off bear in mind, I'm a lot older than you guys, but my first favourite player was a guy who just passed away not that long ago, Davy Wilson, who played in the left wing at Rangers and a fantastic Rangers team in the 60s. So he was my first sort of hero. And then more recently, it was the likes of Davy Cooper, who was a fantastic player, sort of lift you out your seat once he went a run, tremendous. But I also liked Dalglish and also Souness. I thought Souness was a fantastic player, just world class. When I not long after I left drama college, one of my pals was working in Lancaster as a civil engineer, and we used to go down and pick him up at the weekend and go down into Liverpool. And one of my other mates would get tickets to go and see Liverpool play. And at that time they were winning European Cups, and to watch them was just fantastic. The goalkeeper would give the ball to Hansen would give it to Souness, and he would just dictate the whole play. It was brilliant to watch. So yeah, he's one of my favourites.
But you weren't compromised when he went to Celtic then? Or being a Celtic, obviously went to Liverpool after Celtic, but I mean, you weren't compromised that he was a Celtic man.
Who was a Celtic man?
Dalglish.
No, not at all. Well, in fact, Brian will know this. Dalglish is actually a Rangers fan.
Oh, yeah.
He certainly was growing up, because the story goes that Sean Fallon, when he went to sign him as a schoolboy, he went up because he lived in the high flats beside the Albion training ground at Edmiston Drive. And when Sean Fallon went up, he'd take all his Rangers posters off his bedroom wall. So, he's a fantastic player. And I've been fortunate enough, through All an Excuse, I've got to meet him a few times, and been fortunate enough to perform at a couple of charity things that his wife Marina set up. So, yeah, good memories.
It's you'd been involved in acting all your life, really. Well, since you were about 10 years of age, weren't you? So you first had an introduction to the thespian world.
Yeah, that's right. I think I was about 11 or 12 when I did my first television play. But when I was about 10, my dad came home one night and said, "Look, there's a junior course at the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama in Glasgow. Do you fancy giving it a go? It's a Saturday morning thing." It was actually Saturday morning and Wednesday after school. And I'd never tried anything like that in my life. At that time, drama wasn't part of the school curriculum. And but I was an only child, and I think my dad was always keen to look for things that, would involve me with other kids, because when you're an only child, you spend a lot of your time in the grown-up of adults,
Like these days before social media, how would your dad find out about that? Did he read it in the paper or something, or did somebody mention it to him?
It was somebody at work. It was somebody. My dad was he's trained as a commercial artist and he was in advertising, and which is the path that I very nearly followed. But somebody at work mentioned it to him. He said, "Your Jonathan might quite like this." They knew somebody that had tried it. It was quite a unique thing at that time. There was a real mixture of kids that used to go along to it. Alex Norton, who I worked with in Two Doors Down, he went along to it as well. He was for the Gorbals. I was brought up in St George's Cross, but you would get kids from Newton Mearns, from you guys, that's a very affluent part of Glasgow, Newton Mearns, Whitecraigs, Hossel. It was a real melting pot. And I absolutely loved it. I loved it. And I did it for about, I was about 17. But at that time, with the BBC, particularly the BBC, if they were casting anything, they would come along on a Saturday and they would sit at the back and look and see what the kids were doing. If there was anybody that they thought might, do the trick for them, might be suitable for the part you would be asked to read. And I get into it quite early on. And I did it. The first thing I did was a Wednesday play, which was the forerunner for Play for Today. And it was a really good part. And it went well. And after that, I did an awful lot of stuff. Dr. Finlay's Casebook, Sutherland's Law, worked with Alan Parker, the filmmaker, that just before he went into movies, did a big commercial with him. But it meant that my first 2 years at secondary school, I wasn't there all that much, actually. I was getting time off to do stuff. But that was my sort of introduction into the world of TV, yeah.
And during that time, from those times you were in that, did you find that you were funny, or you could make people laugh, or was that something that happened later on?
No, I used to. If you ask a lot of actors, they'll come back with more or less the same answer. I used to do mimicry and stuff like that. Be able to do the voices of the teachers and stuff like that. And so yeah, I was able to turn my hand to a wee bit of comedy then, but not. And when I was doing the television stuff, it was all drama stuff. It wasn't. There was no comedy involved.
No, but I was just meaning about the mimicry, because that clearly is something you'd done for a long, long time before you honed it when you started doing. It's only an excuse, it's something you knew you could do, and you likely say you probably watched and listened and noted because one of the things that I like most about it's how you do how they act, how those people are acting. So all those football personalities, it's not what you're saying as much as it's all the nuances that you've studied.
Maybe looks and stuff.
That become you exaggerating, but it's that all of them are exactly what they do or what they did do. And I think that's brilliant. And that's a lot to do with observation.
Oh, thank you. Well, observation's a big part of acting, and as a result, there's an awful lot of actors that can do great mimicry as well, like, for instance, I've mentioned Alex there. Alex Norton does a brilliant James Mason, which is really difficult to do. Elaine C can do Cilla Black, Andy Gray, my pal Andy Gray is no longer with us. He used to do Sean Connery, So actors, I've usually got somebody in the locker that they can do,
Yeah, Brian brought up Only an Excuse there. And for our non-Scots listeners who are probably not so familiar with the football sketch show, which you fronted on TV for 27 years, and I think it was on radio before that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a Hogmanay staple on the BBC north of the border. So you're probably as much of a New Year TV tradition as Jules Holland and his Hootenanny.
Well, that's the programme that we used to always turn over to after we'd watched our programme go out. No, it was great to do. It was a privilege to be part of it. And God, you can say 27 years there. When we started out on the radio, we never for a minute thought it would last as long and be as successful, I suppose, as it was. But yeah.
Just thinking that on that show you did so many impressions of the great and good from the Scottish football scene down the years. I assume most of them took it well, but did anyone take exception to the Mickey taking?
Yeah, I think there's probably a few that did. The thing is, at the end of the day, a good joke is going to sort of rankle with somebody, So you've got to accept that. But it wasn't too bad. There was when we started out, this didn't affect me. But when Tony Roper was doing the programme as well, he used to do a takeoff of Gordon McQueen, and Gordon wasn't too happy with it. And to be fair to Gordon, it wasn't really an accurate taking of his voice. It was more a sort of caricature, and it didn't sort of shade him in a good light. So I could understand his nose being out of joint with that. The one time that it happened with me was actually it was out with Only an Excuse, but Brian's old gaffer, Sir Alex Ferguson, phoned me up, and he was doing a charity night in Glasgow for Harmony Row Boys Club. And I think that's when I met you, Brian. I think you were at that night.
Probably was at that, yeah.
It was up in Victoria's nightclub, which is, but it's no longer there now, but it's quite a famous establishment in its day. And so Fergie asked me to do this. Would you do a bit of Only an Excuse? So Philip Differ, who devised Only an Excuse, he very kindly put together a script for me. And I was sitting there, I was looking through it just before I was about to perform it. And there was a gag that I wondered about. I thought it was a wee bit near the bone. And I said to Andy Cameron, very famous Scottish comedian, he was a big pal of Fergie's. I said, Andy, what do you think? I said, that gag there about Davy Hay, what do you think about it? He went, oh, that's great. And then Sir Alex got it, what's going on? I said, it's that gag there, I'm not too sure about it. He said, oh, he says, just do it, it's fine, just do it. So I did the gag, and it was, David was manager of Celtic at the time. And he came into the room and was like, no, come in, David, have a seat. No, on the chair, no on the floor, right? And it got a big laugh. Little did I know, Davy Hay was in the audience. And he was raging, right? Not happy at all. And I was whisked away by Roy Aiken and Billy Kirkwood. And I always remember Big Roy said, oh, fuck him, just leave it, forget it, right? And anyway, about a week later at the Football Players Player of the Year Award, Davy was there with a white tuxedo, and he was quite a scary guy. My big pal Tony Higgins used to say he was the hardest player he ever played against. He said he was like the silent assassin. And anyway, Davy was standing there with a white tuxedo on. And Philip Differ was with me. He said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to apologise to Davy Hay for last week. He said, don't, just leave it. I said, no, I'm going to do it. So I went up to him and I said, Davy, look, I'm really sorry about if you were offended at the gag last week. I apologise. And he said, don't worry about it, son. He said, it's fine. He said, I'm just glad I was there and I didn't hear it second hand. So God knows what would have happened to me if that had been the case. But, that's about the only time Frank McAvennie, he sometimes, or it's maybe his agent, kicks up a stink and, there was one occasion we were doing a week's run at the King's Theatre, and he said he was going to picket it because he was furious that they were making more money being me out of me. And so we got all this publicity. We were sold out for a week. You couldn't get a ticket for loving the money. So, but it's been fine. So everybody seems to take it in good spirit because it's meant, we're lovers of the game, we don't mean to offend. And I think maybe, Brian, you can back me up here. I think, the wicked sense of humour in a football dressing room is probably much harsher than what we were dishing out. So,
yes, very, very, very much so. Yeah, so that's you would, but that's confined within the dressing room. Nobody really wants to, be. Except if you go back to the Naked Radio stuff, when you were doing that, I used to pray that you're not going to do me.
Really?
I said, oh, please, yeah, because I used to listen to it, or people record it for me, because I live in England, and then I was thought, oh, please don't be doing me, because I just didn't want to have this. You just don't want people to be saying that how you sound or how you look about this. I've had a lot more of it now because I've got older and I've got a beard and I've got long hair, social media and all that stuff. But at the time, I didn't want to.
If we're still doing the programme, you'd have been great. So is that the makeup girls would have a field day?
There you go.
Well, yeah, so
if you ever make a comeback, there you go. You've got your prime target for the lampooning.
I'll just do it myself.
Fair enough. That's good.
Is there one particular impression that people always sort of stop you in the street and ask you to do, or people remember fondly, or is it?
Well, there's a few. I can tell you. I mean, with Two Doors Down, one of the actors in it It's a guy who's a wrestler as well as an actor called Graeme Souness. I mean, he got on really, really well. He's the only other Rangers fan in the cast and crew. So if we're sitting in the couch, I'm usually stuck beside Grado, and when we're about to do a scene, we do really long scenes, like 10-page scenes, and usually it's either myself or Elaine that's got to drive it, and it's got the bulk of the dialogue. So you've really got to be focused and you've really got to concentrate. So, you'll go through it a few times and then they'll decide, right, we're ready to shoot now. So you got all your checks and everything like that. Sound guy's ready. The camera's just about to turn over and they're just about to shout action. And Grady will nudge me in the arm and he'll go, "Johnny, hey, Graeme Souness, eh?" And you're like, "You shut up." But, so Souness is one that I get asked to do. Philip still gets me to do Dennis Law from time to time from and what other ones? These are, people ask me to do Frank McAvennie, but I can't do that without the teeth, so I'm off the hook with that one,
Yeah, I saw an interview with him online actually, and I posted a clip of a fantastic sketch that he did with him, the petrol station sketch. I put it on our Twitter account. But he says he really enjoyed it in the main, and he seemed to take it pretty well. Although he does dispute the fact that he ever said his catchphrase, "Where's the Burds?" Well,
listen, I'll pick you up. I'll tell you what happened with that. He did say it. He just can't remember it. He'd be out his box or something like that. But he wandered into Burds Bar, which is a bar in the East End of Glasgow, one morning. We know this for a fact because there used to be a wee guy that worked in the store in the BBC studios called Andy Hutton.
I know him.
You know Andy?
Yeah.
Great wee guy. He's retired now, Brian. But,
yeah, I met him in Glasgow.
Yeah, well, Philip was friendly with Andy, as I was as well. You always chat away about the football. And Andy was in Burds Bar one morning, about 11 o'clock, and Frank wandered into the bar, and he looked about, and he said to the barman, "Where's the Burds?" And Andy told us this, right? And Philip said, "Oh, I see, that's dynamite." So that's how we wouldn't be able to think that up, but he did say it, and it was in Burds Bar.
Anytime I ever see Frank, I didn't actually play in the same team as Frank at all, but every time I see him every now and again, and he says that's one of the things he'll say when you're chatting away to him. He'll come out with that. So even though he might not remember it now, he will say it,
Yeah.
You go, it's just this part of his personality,
Yeah.
Either that or you guys are writing his material.
Yeah, he's nicking our scripts. That's right. Yeah. No, he's a good guy, and he was a great player as well.
Well, that would be a bit of a problem because I don't think Frank can read, can he? I think he was at school long enough to learn.
Hey, you said it, not me.
I'm quite happy to say it,
Jockey, did you or any of your teammates do any good impressions of each other?
I think that he would always do bits about the manager, try to do bits about, or Alex Ferguson, and maybe even be influenced by the stuff that you were doing on It's Only an Excuse, but one of the things that, I would have thought he'd have hated that. He's a great sense of humour, Alex Ferguson. Something you learn as you spend more time with him, but it's the sort of thing I thought he'd have hated, that people parodying him, particularly on such a wonderful show. But what you do is, what you're doing is you're mirroring, or you're exaggerating those things he did, that's what he did. All those things that you see him doing.
He said to me, Brian, he said, I've been in this company a few times, and he said, you can't do me. You can't do me. He said, gigs you can do me. You can't. But his brother Martin lives in the corner from us, and Martin loves it. He absolutely loves it. But Fergie is one of my favourite ones to do as well. We once did. We asked Kirsty Wark to interview me as Fergie, and she was fantastic. She was brilliant. She did it as if she was interviewing like a politician in Newsnight. She was completely dead straight, and I worked her straight. But going back to, you know, how you mentioned the sketch that you put up of Macca doing in the filling station, the Pump 2 sketch. I heard this, and if you're ever speaking to Frank again, you can ask him to verify this, but somebody was telling me that he was at some event not long after that sketch went out, and we had two really good-looking girls in the sketch, but the father of one of them approached Macca and said, that was my daughter you were talking to. He's going, what? He said, the one that you said Pump 2, that's my daughter who's not pleased about it. He said to Frank, not me.
So was the 2020 Only an Excuse special absolutely the last one? You're not tempted to go back? If only to get stuck back into Brendan Rodgers again. Now he's back to Celtic. No. Was it 20? It was 2020. Was that the last one? Was it? I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. No. It was the right time to bring the programme to an end. You know, you know, the programmes have got a lifespan, and we just reached the end of ours. And you know, irrespective of how much fun we had doing it and all that, you know, sometimes you just got to realise, no, we need to finish it now and move on. So I wouldn't be tempted to go back in. So yeah.
Life with Brian.
I read somewhere that you went to London in the 80s for a couple of years. Is that right?
I did, yeah.
Why did you decide to go, and what happened while you were there? Because there's very little mention of.
Well, the thing, I think I know, if you got this from Wikipedia, somebody actually sabotaged my Wikipedia page and said something along the lines of, he went down to London for a couple of years, but it didn't work out, and he came back up the road.
No, I didn't. I just saw the bit about you went. I was just quite intrigued about, you know, why you went to London, really. I was interested. I thought it'd be interesting, you know.
The reason I went down is because my agent is a London agent, right? And I had I joined forces with Scott Marshall's about 1983, something like that. And at that time, you don't have to do it so much now because of Zoom and all this kind of stuff. It was important to go down and meet casting directors and things like that. So I went down and I lived there. I was based there for about 3 years. And it was at the time that I was doing naked video in City Lights, which took up a big part of the year, but my base was down, and I did a few jobs while I was there. But I was there for 3 years, and about 1989, I was looking to try and buy my first flat. And at that time, you couldn't afford a flat in London. You just couldn't afford it. And I took the decision to come back up and be beside my family, and that was it. So it was a good 3 years. It was productive in that I met a lot of people, and that stood me in good stead for a number of years. But I came back up because I couldn't afford to live down there. I couldn't buy a flat. I just couldn't. It was a fortune, and I came back up to Glasgow.
Yeah, that's a relevant story to that. Right about the same time, Pat Nevin moved from Clyde to Chelsea, and after a year of living in London, Pat went to the bank manager to go to see if he could get a mortgage to buy a property, a flat on somewhere around about Chelsea, and the bank manager said to him, "Can you bring your contract in so that I can see, you know, how much you're getting paid as an evidence of what you're getting paid?" "Hey, no problem." He said, went in the following week with his contract and showed the guy his contract, and he just laughed at him.
Really?
Yeah, he just laughed at him. And Nah, you've no chance of buying a property round about where you're thinking about for that kind of money you're on. And he was on decent football money at the time, you know.
Is that partly because the precariousness of the...
No, just because the guy wouldn't give him the amount of money he needed based on what he was earning, you know.
Listen,
he ended up having to buy a flat with his pal.
Oh,
so that was the only way they could end up
to do it.
You know, the Simon Ramond, who's in the Cocteau Twins, that's how they managed to buy a flat, you know, or whatever, you know, so.
Let's see. Well, I remember when I did Local Hero in 82, I'd made a few bob doing that job, and I went to the bank manager of the Building Society to try and get everything in place to buy a flat in Glasgow. And everything was all lined up. It was, shows you how long ago it was about 13 grand for a one-bedroom flat in Highland, right? And I had a good chunk of it to pay for it. And because I was an actor at that time, they were reluctant to give actors mortgages. And I remember going to the guy and saying, look, can we put this through? And he went, no. I said, I've had a change of heart, you're not getting it. I said, right, give me my money back. Yeah, so...
We've got to touch on the success of Two Doors Down, haven't we? And it's moving to BBC One too. Surely that's an indicator of its success right there, isn't it?
Well, I hope so. It's done pretty well since it's been on BBC Two. You know, we didn't think for a second it would, you know, grow into what it has, because initially it was a one-off. You know, it was a 1 hour comedy drama, if you like. And it came about very quickly. I mean, I got a call on the Thursday to go down and meet them on the Friday. And by the Monday, the contract was all in place. And we did this. We filmed for about 10 days non-stop in the house in Paisley, from 8 in the morning till 8 at night. It went out on New Year's Eve in BBC One. And because of the likes of social media beginning to kick off, the programme took off. And about 1.5 years later, we started the series. And it went out this time BBC Two. It's been great. We love doing it. And hopefully the switch to BBC One works. We're still doing the post-production in the last series, which we stopped filming a few weeks ago. The press will be beginning of next month for about 3 days in London, and then it'll go out, I think, around about the middle of November. The first one gets transmitted, yeah.
So for anyone that hasn't seen it, how would you describe your character, Colin, and how much of yourself have you put into him?
None of myself. He's a complete pain in the arse, but he's great to play. And listen, I'm not the one because Elaine C always says, Johnny's nothing like that. He's nothing like that. He's not like that guy. But he's always going to get one up and says the worst things without blinking an eye. Yeah, my idea of the worst neighbour ever. But you know, little groups of people are built up with different kinds of folk, and you get people like that. And I think one of the reasons that the show has enjoyed a bit of success is people, no matter where they are in the UK, they can relate to the different characters in that setup. And it's done, out of all the work I've done, it's got more recognition all over the UK than anything I can think of. I mean, you know, I did Doctor Who, Jodie Whittaker's last series of Doctor Who. So I was down in Wales for quite a while. People in Wales go nuts for it. You know, you get into London and do an interview or an audition, people stop you in the street. I've never had anything like that before. So I hope the transfer at BBC One works, and you know, it goes on. Yeah.
Well, it's a brilliant cast of some of Scotland's most recognisable comedy actors, including Elaine C. Smith, who you've already mentioned there. When she plays Christine, she just shows up and she steals most of the scenes that she's in, which is some feat considering the rest of the talent who are in the show. You've worked with her for 40 odd years. Is she as much of a legend off screen as she is on it?
Oh yeah, I'm very fond of her. I've known her since, oh God, more than that. I've known her since 1976. Yeah, 1976. Because she was the year above me at drama college in Glasgow. Although I'm a couple of years older than her, so I didn't go straight from school. And she's a great person and a very good friend of mine, and she's great fun to work with. Yeah, me, Elaine, and Alex are usually the ones that can crack up with the giggles on set. So yeah, she's great fun.
And apart from only an excuse, obviously, it seems like there's an absence of real-world football banter or references from a lot of the Scottish sitcoms and sketch shows, which always leaves me pondering, like, which teams certain characters might support. But is that a deliberate thing when these shows are written to avoid alienating anyone over just silly little things like football?
I don't know. It might be. It might very well be. I mean, they are quite precious about, or careful, I should say, about, if you're going to mention one team, you've got to sort of balance it with the other. And the BBC are quite wary of that. I mean, I can tell you a story. When we were finishing up with Only an Excuse, they wanted an hour special to show sort of greatest hits, like Pump 2, but also some new stuff. But it was still quite a lot to fill up. So I the production meeting, I said, look, why don't we get people who we've taken off, like ask Walter Smith, Graeme Souness, Kenny Dalglish, if, what their memories are of the programme. And that was thought to be a good idea. And the three of them did it, they accepted right away. They had no problem with that. But one of the ones I wanted to ask was Neil Lennon. And they wouldn't let Neil do it unless they get somebody like Ali McCoy to balance it out. And it was, of course, you can't, Brian, I'll tell you, you can't Neil Coisty down. So you have quite, a tight schedule to work with. So we ended up, Lenny wasn't asked. So do you want to hear the story about Lenny and All an Excuse?
Yeah, brilliant.
So we were having a production meeting, and Lenny was at his first spell as Celtic manager. And the girls in the wardrobe department said, look, we can't get a hold of his tracksuit jacket, his tracky top. We can't get it. Nike were doing it at that time, and it was black, and the inside collar was green, white, and gold, and they couldn't get it. And I said, look, I'll try and get it, right? So I phoned Chick Young up, and I said, Chick, what game are you doing at the weekend? He said, I'm at Parkhead, Celtic, Inverness, Caledonian Thistle. I said, listen, you do me a favour. Would you ask Lenny if we can borrow his tracksuit top? He goes, for fuck's sake, you're kidding me. I said, no, just ask him, he'll be all right. So Chick arrived at Parkhead, was doing the pre-match stuff, and interviewed Neil. And at the end of it, he said, look, Johnnie was wondering if he could borrow your tracksuit top for Only an Excuse. And Lenny goes, you're kidding me. He said, no, they can't go to the jacket. And he said, see me at the end of the game. So the game took place, and unbelievably, Inverness Cali Thistle beat Celtic, right? And Neil got involved in a bit of a rammy with people behind the dugout, Celtic fans, a bit of an altercation. So at the end of the game, Chick had to interview the two managers. So he interviewed Big Terry Butcher, who was manager in Inverness, and then he had to interview Neil. And the interview wasn't going well at all. Neil was raging. And in the end, he stormed off. And Chick just said, he said, and by the way, he said, can I get the tracky top for Johnnie? And he had this hurl of abuse thrown at him. But we got the tracksuit top and used it for the programme. Then I returned it to him in a bottle of Blue Nun. So, no, he's a good guy.
you've got to tell me, how does you get a call or a message or a note or something to say, can you read for Doctor Who? Where does that come from? How do you feel? Were you made up? Do you think it was a piss take? How did it transpire?
Well, what happened was there's a guy called Andy Pryor that is the casting director for Doctor Who, and my agent had said that he was trying to get me on board for a while. And what happened, it was quite simple, Brian. I got a phone call from my agent. It was a Friday night, actually. It was the last thing on a Friday. And she said, Johnny, look, this Andy's wondering if you could read for Doctor Who, part of the commander of the Centaurans. And I haven't watched Doctor Who since Patrick Troughton was in it. So I said, I fire it through. And they want it for Monday. So I had to tape it, do a self-tape over the weekend. So my son, he was at home at the time. He's a big Doctor Who fan. I said, listen, I've got this self-tape. You give me a hand on it? He said, what's it? I said, it's for Doctor Who. He said, what's the part? I said, I don't know, it's Commander of the Centaurans. He went, Dad, that's huge. That's huge. So anyway, I did the tape, sent it off. They watched it on the Monday, and I got offered the job on the Tuesday. And it was during lockdown. So when I had to travel down to Cardiff for my fittings and for filming and everything, I had to drive down. And I had a special letter with Doctor Who heading in case the police stopped me in the motorway. They didn't have six, I didn't have cars. And I absolutely loved it. It was the most fantastic job. The makeup was something else. I mean, if I was on set at 8 o'clock in the morning, I had to get up about 3:30. So, but I loved it. And Jodie Whittaker and all the cast, they were great. They were brilliant.
And there's one thing about that when you're looking at that. I mean, because I remember the character from early on in the time. It's one of the scary ones, or one of the proper scary ones in the way it was. And
yeah,
I believe you played it with a bit of a Scottish accent. But the other thing about it, when you look at it, you've got to eat, haven't you, and do other things when you're wearing all this gear. So how do you manage? It's not as if it's a head you put on, is it? You just take the head off, is it?
Oh, no.
You're caked in all this. How do you eat and go to the toilet or whatever else you've got to do?
That's the first thing you ask, Brian. How am I going to go to the toilet? So that was okay. That was a problem. The head was, I mean, it was like in 3 or 4 different parts. But if I also had teeth that fitted over my own. Pardon me, and you had to unclip them, and then you could actually eat no problem. You know, having lunch was all right. It was just a bit of a bind trying to get it. But it was, I mean, I loved it. I mean, I saw Jodie Whittaker and Mandip Gill, who played her assistant, it was about a year ago down at there was a big do for the 100th anniversary of the BBC at the Natural History Museum, and I'm standing, obviously not in the Centaurn gear, and they were about 6 feet away from me, and they didn't bat an eyelid. And Joy McAvoy, who's in Two Doors Down, she said, "You're not going to say hello to them?" I said, "Well, they've never seen me without the Centaurn gear." And so Joy said, she said, "Hey, you two, you're not going to say hello to Commander Skark?" And they were like, "Oh, Johnny!" So, but she was absolutely brilliant. She was a great person to work with. Yeah.
And have you been to any Doctor Who conventions? Yeah,
I've been to a few. Actually, I was down in Swansea last week.
Do you have to get dressed up as Commander?
No. Listen, I'll tell you this one, you'll love this. The second one I did, second convention, and I never thought I would pass along to these things, but I get invited out to Los Angeles to this massive one called Gallifrey, right?
Yeah.
So it's a 3-day, I was in it there for a week, but it's about a 3-day event. And I'm sitting beside Sylvester McCoy, who's one of the doctors. Yeah. I've done a play with Sylvester about 12 years or so ago, so I know him really well. He's a lovely wee guy. He's just Brilliant. So the two of us are sitting at the desk and we're signing autographs. And this guy approaches me. And a big American guy with a beard. And he's dressed head to toe like Jodie Whittaker, right? He's got the wig on, he's got the jumper, he's got the trousers, the boots. It must have cost a fortune. And he's got this big beard. So he wanders up, and I go, "Aye there," and he goes, "Aye," and usual pleasantries. Thanks me for restoring the Santarn Empire to its rightful place in the galaxy. No problem, mate. No problem. And he said, look, at the end of it, he said, "I wonder if you'd sign this for me." And he went inside his coat, and he brought out a box set of Two Doors Down. And I'm going, "You're fucking kidding me." And he went, no, he said, "I watched it in BritBox." So I couldn't believe it. Yeah. So yeah, I do a few of the conventions, and they're great fun. They really are. Yeah.
That's wonderful. You tried to appear on stage at least once a year.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if have you ever done, or you ever consider, or you any ambition to do Chekhov, Ibsen, Shakespeare, King Lear, perhaps?
I've done Chekhov a couple of times. I haven't done Ibsen. I've done Shakespeare. I do plan to go out again soon with a one-man play that was written for me by one of Scotland's top playwrights, a guy called Douglas Maxwell, and I did it a year past in February. So I think that there's sort of talks of maybe doing that again. So that's one of the things I'm hoping to do. But I've done quite a lot of theatre in the course of the years I've been doing this game. So I always think for me, it's important to try and touch base with doing a theatre job, but once every year and a half, so you don't lose the fear. You know.
So do you think it's clearly more terrifying to do it in front of a live audience than it is to do Two Doors Down, for example?
It's not terrifying. It's just a different discipline, and I think it just keeps you in your toes, you know. I mean, there's still pressure on doing something that's filmed, you know, because although you get a number of goes at it, you want to try and nail it pretty early on. I mean, Gregor Fisher, who I worked with years ago, I always remember what he said. He said, "If you don't get in the third take, forget it." Now that's not necessarily true, but it sharpens your senses a wee bit, it focuses you a wee bit, and I always try and nail it pretty early on, you know.
And one thing that's relevant, I suppose, to both our disciplines is how do you ever read the critics' reviews, or do you react to them, or good, bad, or indifferent, or do you not bother? Well,
I very early on in my career, I worked with Thornton Mackay, right? He was great with me. I learned so much from working with him, and I was only probably about 3 years out of drama college, 3 years out of drama college, and Thornton said to me, he said, "Never read them. Never read them." He said, "They're irrelevant." And he said, "If you do read them," he said, "you've got to treat the good ones the same as you do the bad ones," right? And my dad worked in the newspapers quite early on in his career. My dad used to always say, any critics listening will not be happy with this. My dad used to say, "Just remember, it's the least most important part of a newspaper." Mm-hmm. So I don't read them. And if I finish a job, because I've been doing this for over 40 odd years, if I finish a job, I might look at it now, because usually send through a press pack, and I'll look at it now, but, you know, it doesn't really bother me. You know, I know if it's worked or it hasn't worked. Do you know?
Aye.
You know, if I haven't been on the ball, I don't need anybody to tell me, you know. You know yourself, I don't know if you were playing a game, you didn't think you were like,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, no, you knew the same thing, and it's, well, you know, our director, as in Alex Ferguson, would let you know exactly what he felt about your performance, you know, so he didn't necessarily need anyone else to say. But, and you're right, you know when you played well or you played poorly or indifferently and what you did right and what you did wrong. Well, the thing I always balked against, and one of the reasons why I've never really been involved in it now, is the ex-players being criticising, you know, and no doubt that they hated ex-players criticising them, but it seems to perpetuate, you know.
Yeah.
I can understand it, and there's very much more opportunities for people to earn a living out of being involved in that side of football.
Yeah.
But I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I mean, it's not... Like yourself, is the same thing, and you grow a bit of you get thick-skinned to it and immune to it, but it kind of affects maybe like your family more than anything else, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I very early on in my career, I was only about a year or two out of college, and I read a review that wasn't. It wasn't a bad one, but it was a sort of underhand compliment, and it kind of put me off, you know, put me off for about a week. And that the lesson I learned from that is don't look at it, you know, don't read it, you know, because it had a negative impact on me. So, yeah.
Life with Brian, life with Brian, life with Brian.
Yes, it's quiz time again, and regular listeners will know what to expect as we embark upon a battle of wits between Chucky and our special guest. So, in Jonathan's honour, we've called this episode's game, Is That Your Excuse? And here are the rules for you both. It's the usual penalty shootout format with 5 alternate questions, and what you have to tell us is whether or not these pathetic excuses for losses or failure are real or made up. And I can reveal that Alex Ferguson's blaming of Manchester United's grey third kit clashing with the crowd against Southampton does not make the cut. No. However, to commemorate that famous excuse from 1996, if you think something is a genuine excuse offered, say third kit. And if it's false and entirely made up by me, say don't believe it. Okay, so
I thought you were going to come up. I thought there was going to be a different rhyming right.
So we've got third kit if you think it's true, and don't believe it if you think it's false. Okay, so Jonathan, you have the pleasure of going first, and your opener is this. Kenny Dalglish once blamed his Liverpool side's defeat at Aston Villa on a late-running Topshop fashion shoot for blazers featuring John Barnes and Barry Venison, which meant the pair were forced to miss a vital league game in the 1990 title race.
Third kit.
Well, you've missed your first penalty. That's false. It's a don't believe it. John Barnes and Barry Venison were famous for their gaudy blazers, but unfortunately that's one completely made up by me.
Yeah, Mark spent a lot of his time making some of these up, so don't be surprised by some of the false excuses. Here's your first one, Shocky, and oh look, it's Kenny Dalglish again. This time he's managing Newcastle in an FA Cup tie at Stevenage in 1998. And the reason for the Magpies being taken to a replay was the ball used in the 0-0 draw was too bouncy.
Third kit.
Yes, good start. Yep, that was his excuse. It doesn't seem to get the stick that Fergie would get for these.
You've taken an early lead there, Brian. Jonathan, you playing catch up. So your second excuse is that of another Scotsman. It's Chucky's mate, Gordon Strachan. And after failing to qualify for the 2018 World Cup, he claimed that Scotland's players were genetically inferior to those of other nations because they were too small.
Third kit.
That is third kit.
Yeah, that is third kit. Correct. Yeah, that's.
Was he speaking from experience or?
Must be.
I think I was standing next to him when he said it, and I'm thinking, what are you saying? You can't come out with things like
You're towering over him.
I don't know. Gordon's one of the funniest people I've ever come across. I don't know whether that was a glib comment or not. But it's now there as a third kit excuse.
Yeah. All right, so one's each. Okay, over to you then, Matthew.
Yeah, Brian, I promise this is the last of our Scots, and it's Graeme Souness, who once suggested his Rangers team lost a game at Hibernian because his players had picked up a nasty dose of food poisoning from porridge served at the club canteen.
Don't believe it.
Yeah, false, don't believe it. Well,
there's
spotted.
no way you can't get food poisoning from porridge. Porridge kills. Porridge will kill everything. As it's getting made.
Mark, with your Scottish roots, you should have known that when you were making this up.
I know, maybe I was just being too obvious. Okay, all right. All right, Jonathan, catch up again. And your third one is Everton manager Joe Royle blamed a poor performance at Ipswich by goalkeeper Neville Southall on the fact he'd strained his shoulder muscles helping to change a burst tyre on the team bus on the way down to Portman Road.
False.
It is false. It is a don't believe it. Jonathan's got that one spot on. No. Yeah. That's 2-2, but you've got one in hand there, Brian.
Okay. Shocky, your third excuse comes from Jose Mourinho, who ranted that there were not enough ball boys to give his team the ball back when his Real Madrid team were beaten by Barcelona in the 2011 Spanish Super Cup.
Third kit.
Yeah. I think I remember that one. So
I think so.
Yeah, definitely true.
Okay, so 3-2, and Jonathan, your penultimate kick now, and it's a player getting in on the act. Ukraine centre-back Vladislav Vashchuk claimed that loud frogs croaking outside the team hotel had kept him up all night, and that caused him to play badly in a 4-0 thrashing by Spain at the 2006 World Cup.
It's so bonkers it may be true. I'll go third kit.
Oh, that's it. You're keeping yourself in the competition. Very good. Yeah, that is true.
It was one of those. As Mark was reading it, I was thinking, this is just too, even I don't know the answer. I don't really know the answers to these till I read it on the script. So I could have fallen for that one. Brian, your fourth penalty is courtesy of Liverpool's notorious excuse merchant, Jurgen Klopp, whose explanation as to why Roberto Firmino would not challenge for headers in a 2018 game against Wolves because he was afraid of damaging some very expensive dental work he'd just undergone on his trademark gnashers.
Won't believe it.
No, I don't believe that. I mean, if Klopp was playing the game, I can believe it with those teeth. But I don't think it's fair to blame Firmino. So no, false, don't believe it.
Okay, all right. Well, Jonathan, you've got to get this one to at least make Chucky score his last one. And it's former Chelsea forward Eden Hazard, who was dropped and fined 2 weeks' wages for showing up late to a match against Bournemouth in 2015. His excuse? His dog had swallowed a piece of Lego he desperately needed to finish off a giant Harry Potter construction, and he had to save the prize cockapoo from choking.
That's got to be false.
False. It is false. Well done. Yeah.
I'm trying to keep a straight face at the other end here.
I just knew it because he didn't. I knew that Eden Hazard didn't have a cockapoo.
Yeah, the Lego side of it was completely plausible.
Yeah.
When I spoke to Mark in the week, he said, "I'm going to have to do this quiz quickly because I've got to go to Barcelona. I haven't got much time." But reading some of these false ones, you obviously had more time on that trip than you let on.
Yeah, there's not much entertainment on a Ryanair flight from Newcastle to Barcelona. So
this is to win it, isn't it, Chucky?
It is, yeah.
And you conclude the quiz with the recently departed former Fulham owner Mohammed Al Fayed, who claimed the reason they were relegated from the Premier League was down to new owner Shahid Khan having that infamous statue of Michael Jackson stood outside Craven Cottage removed.
Third kit.
Yes, yeah. Emphatic.
That's a 5 out of 5. That's the first time ever.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well done, Brian.
Good guessing.
I think that's
great guessing.
I think that's 3 wins in a row as well.
On a roll.
Yeah, good. Brian, you can smell BS from a mile away.
I'm so proud, very, very proud.
Very proud. Marvellous. Very well, son. Very proud of you.
My class mailbag. My class mailbag. My class mailbag.
We've been inundated with questions from the listeners in the mailbag, Matthew, so please pick out a few to ask Brian and Jonathan.
Okay, possibly a tricky one, this one for two Scots, but Navdeep Rehil asks, after England's 3-1 victory over Scotland at Hampden Park, Graeme Souness said it would be a huge failure if this current group of English players didn't win a major tournament. Do you both agree with this view?
I think they've got a great group of players. I think they've got a really strong team. But I'm not sure that the teams that usually win aren't the ones that are obviously 2 years beforehand. So I think it's too early to start talking them up just now. I mean, they could win it, but I just think that the teams that usually come through are the ones that have won it in the past, and they're sort of serial winners. So I think they'll need to go some to pick up a major tournament.
Do you have this hatred of England the same as Brian does, Jonathan? I don't feel afraid to give the truth, and we don't mind.
I wouldn't say hatred. I mean, every time we play England, you want Scotland to win. I mean, that goes back to when I was a wee boy. It was instilled in you, and used to. I mean, when I was a wee boy, I don't know if Brian remembers it as much, but the home international series. Yeah. You used to. That was the game of the year, you know. And but no, I'm not. I like it when Scotland triumph. In fact, I like it when any team triumph over England, actually. But I wouldn't say I've got any hatred. So
yeah, it's not just me.
Well, I know you take yours to a different level, though. You take yours to cricket, to tiddlywinks, to 10-pin bowling.
No, so do I, actually.
Oh, fair enough. You just had to be honest. We don't mind. I'm used to it with Brian now. Brian, I get the feeling, Brian, you're going to say, "Oh yeah, England should win the World Cup with this squad of players."
Well, I think that they've got a group of players that are good enough. Whether they perform in the finals, assuming they qualify, is another thing. But for me, why England have not been successful when they've got close to it is that the tactics on the day, not necessarily not the players, because I think I don't think that there's been enough concentration on attacking. I think there's been too much emphasis on defending. When you get to situations like that, I just feel you might as well just have a go at it. And if you lose by being on the front foot, then okay. But I think England have lost because they've not got on the front foot early enough in the games. Yeah. So that's what I would say. So whether that's a lesson that's been learned by the management, we'll have to wait and see. But that's my reading of it. That had they been a bit more proactive in some of those games, playing another forward rather than I get annoyed, and I've said it so many times about how many defensive players you need. In England, I've got so many very good attacking players. They don't need to have 5 defenders really, or 6 defenders. You know, they should play. Yeah, but how you fit them into that team style is another matter. But players should be good enough to play anywhere, in my view, particularly the forwards. So if they keep attacking and picking teams to go forward and score goals, then they've got a great chance.
Next, it's McJunes, who wants to know from Jonathan, can we get a cheeky wee love triangle on Two Doors Down involving Christine Macca and a character played by Dave Anderson? Says it would be comedy gold.
I don't think that will ever happen, actually.
Not now, it's on BBC One.
I don't think so. No, I think Elaine might have some objection to that. But the guy is mentioning Dave there. He must have been a fan of City Lights all those years ago. So, no, I don't think that'll happen. Sorry.
Okay, that's a no then. Over to Chocky. Chris Harris asks, what is Chocky's favourite ever sitcom?
Favourite ever sitcom?
Yeah.
Just something that pops into my head is Fawlty Towers.
Yeah, that's the one I was going to say.
Yeah. I was going to ask you next, but you've answered that question. So you both come out with Fawlty Towers, yeah?
Fawlty, yeah. But it's it's like you could, if you had a bit of time thinking about it, but Faulty Towers, cracks me up every time. Yeah.
Okay. Last but not least, it's our old friend Cumbrian Dave, and he's got a question for Jonathan.
Which Glasgow pub comes to mind where it's likely a Sontaran humanoid will probably just blend in unnoticed?
The Lauriston. Yeah. I mean, listen, you can take your pick from many. But,
and Brian's taken me in all of them, I think.
That's a very good question, actually, because if you've got people who would wander into places like that, the likelihood is that people would not even bother about it.
Have you got time for a quick story which relates to that?
Yeah.
Years ago, Philip asked me to do a sketch show called The Ferguson Theory with Craig Ferguson. And my role in it was Craig used to do stand-up and I used to fill in doing sketches. And there was a sketch about the cat. Can't remember the exact name again. You guys might remember. Pinhead. Remember the horror feature Pinhead?
Oh, yeah. Hellraiser.
Yeah, Hellraiser. Well, the guy that did the actual prosthetics for that lives and works in Glasgow. So I got the whole Hellraiser Pinhead gear made for me, right? The whole lot. I was in at 4 o'clock in the morning. We've got this fired in, and the coat, everything, the boots. They even had black contact lenses for my eyes. And I got me to BBC, taken out to the location, which is Mulgai, just in the north part of Glasgow. We parked at the car park there, and we're going on through the underpass up into the shopping centre to film in the shopping precinct. And it was about 8:30 in the morning, and I'm walking up, and 2 old women are coming down, and I've got all this gear on, and one said to the other, "There's that boy, there's Graeme Souness." You're kidding me. Absolutely true. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, Brian, the amount of times you go in the Lauriston and people are all dressed up for that pub crawl that they do, the people probably wouldn't notice if they were.
No, probably wouldn't. Certainly, people that go into the pubs all the time wouldn't. I think it's part of that thing. People think, oh, there's somebody trying to stand out, or there's somebody to show off. Whereas in the west of Scotland, it's frowned upon.
Yes.
So they'd probably ignore it, saying, "Oh, they're looking for attention. We'll just ignore it."
Just ignore it. That's absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we'll call it a day there. And the first thing to do is say thanks to Jonathan Watson for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. What have you got coming out on the telly for our listeners to keep an eye on?
What have I got coming up? I think I've got. I'm in an episode of Annika coming. I'm not sure if that's out yet. And Two Doors Down should be transmitted in BBC One at the middle of November. So hope you can tune in and you enjoy it.
Brian and Matthew, thanks to you both, of course.
Cheers, sir. Thank you, Jonathan.
And finally, a big thanks to you out there in the ether for tuning in. It's greatly appreciated. Please remember to hit the subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts and follow us on the app formerly known as Twitter and Instagram at Brian McClare Pod. We're part of the Sports Social Podcast Network, so give those guys a follow too. Do join us again next time for more stuff and nonsense. Cheers.
Life with Brian. Life with Brian. Talking films or music. Life with Brian. Talking TV and food. Life with Brian. Talking trivia and exercise. Life with Brian. It's different every episode. Life with Brian. Talking politics and football. Life with Brian. It's different every episode. Life with Brian. Life with Brian.